Hi, we're the Game Brass. I'm Robby Duguay, trumpeter for the Game Brass,
Hi, I'm Daniel Romberger, trombonist for the Game Brass.
and we are joined today by the fantabulous composer, Mr. Mark Sparling. Hello, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, great to be here.
Awesome. And so, Mark, I wanted to take some time, talk to you about our arrangements, and talk to you about your compositions and your composition process a little bit. We've had the pleasure of knowing each other now for, I don't know, what, like 8 years probably?
Yeah, at
Something
least.
like that. It's
At
been
least.
it's been a while. So when I first met you, you were studying at Humber.
Yeah, or just out of like maybe a year or two after I had exited. Wanted to go like the jazz guitar route, ran into some like wrist issues, and also came to the realization that like jazz guitar is maybe not the most lucrative and smart thing to get into. No shade against jazz guitarists out there. It just especially with like my injury at the same time, I just sort of realized that I needed to try something else, and I'd always been a bit of a gamer, so I started going to a bunch of like Toronto meetups.
Thinking back to that time, I actually had no idea that you played guitar at all. Because I maybe you were taking a break because of your injury or whatever, but like I didn't know you were a guitarist. When you said you were at Humber, I just sort of assumed you were either in composition or, I mean, everyone I know at Humber seems to play bass, so maybe I assumed you play bass.
Yeah, that's fair.
Uh, Everyone plays jazz bass now. Adam Robinson Yu is the creator of A Short Hike, which is the game that Mark composed for that we're talking about today. So, how did you first meet Adam?
I met Adam. It's gonna get a little convoluted maybe, but I met someone at the Games with Friends event at Bento, and then through them I met some other friends, and then they were friends with Adam. They were either working on or like maybe a year after I had met them, they started working on Pitfall Planet with him, which was sort
Right.
of like a joint collaboration between U of T and OCAD.
Hmm.
Right. And so actually Emma Ember was on that team as well, if I
Yeah.
recall.
Yeah.
She
Yeah.
did the album art for the Brass Indie Expo.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. So we love working with Emma. She also did Horns of Hyrule art.
I didn't know that. That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, she sent me, I think, my most favorite Discord message I've ever gotten, which was just out of nowhere, just wait, flugelhorns are real?
Oh my God.
Anyway, okay, so Emma would have been on the Pitfall Planet team as well as Adam, and then that I remember going and seeing them at Level Up, which is like the student showcase event in Toronto. So you were
Mhm.
connected with them by that point.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, yeah, I mean, I guess through Emma and like Saffron. And I don't think like we weren't really, super close or like, super pally or anything at the time. I feel like it wasn't until we sort of did a couple game jams together, and that Adam sort of became more familiar with my work. And then, when he was working on A Short Hike, he was looking for a composer, and yeah, he was familiar with my stuff. There was like one album that I had done, or one game soundtrack that I had done for another friend that was kind of similar to sort of what they were looking for A Short Hike. So yeah, that's sort of how that kind of happened. Very lucky.
I
Yeah,
mean, talk about right place at the right time on
yeah,
that one.
yeah,
What
100%.
a game. And I'll say, to your credit, what a soundtrack. The whole package of it is just beautiful. Very, very touching. I was not expecting to be as touched by the story of that game as I was. I expected a
Wow.
little sandbox, but I got something that stuck with me for years. So that's been really beautiful. So getting into this process with Adam, was it like were you barreling toward a deadline by the time you started, or was it very casual?
I think there was, yeah, deadline was looming. I think it was at most 2 months.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
yeah, and I was also going to GDC at the time. I also randomly got a call to like write an anime style intro for the next Shantae that was going to be the next Shantae at the
Oh.
time. So it was like it was a lot. There was a lot going on. Those were like some of the busiest 2 months I think of my life. I mean, grateful for all the
Wow.
opportunity. Obviously, got to be clear there. But yeah, it was a wild time. There was a lot going on.
it would have been before this time and ranging through this time, but you were doing a piece of music every day. How many did you get up to? 700, 1,000?
1,337.
Excellent. You are the elite.
I had to commit. I had to commit. Once I got to a certain point, I was like, I have to go this far at least, even though it was awful at times.
Oh, that's
Would
so
not
impressive.
recommend.
How far into that 1,337 streak was a short hike?
Probably maybe 1,000 or 900.
Oh, wow.
I can go back. There's like, I think I did a couple of a short hike, like early sketches on the Game Boy. So they're on the album on Bandcamp, but I think if you go back to my dailies albums, they're also on there somewhere. There's like versions of a couple of the tracks on there.
Yeah. So do you feel like those dailies like set you up for a short hike or helped you, or was it a hindrance to try and do both at the same time? Like you said that some of the dailies were melodies from them. Like how did you feel trying to balance those?
It's pretty awful, honestly. Like working way too much. I feel like getting close to the end, I like messed up my neck. It was a bad time, but it worked out. So, and I survived and rested after. But yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't recommend it. I don't think. Actually, there was one good thing that came from it. Somewhere in the Woods, which is probably one of my favorite that I've written off of there. That was like an old daily from like, I think like maybe day like 300 or 400 that I sent to Adam. Because I was panicking a bit while I was working on the music for a short hike and just sort of sending him like a bunch of dailies being like, do you think this could fit? Do you think this could fit? And then I sent him that one. He was like, I really like this one. And that came together really quickly. Like I was like, I know what I want to do. Like I want to have these like sustain chords. Like it's piano with the sustain pedal down, but like playing it on different like guitar and mandolin and banjo. So yeah, that one came together really fast and would not have existed without, the prior work of the dailies. And I mean, I will say, like, in terms of ethic and just being able to write stuff faster and sort of letting go of caring, like, if I write something good or not, just sort of knowing that if it's bad, I can just throw it out and write something else. That process of the dailies definitely helped. But in the moment, it was awful.
So looking back at that time, can you think of what you might have been inspired by? Like I definitely hear some Ghibli vibes, sort of like a Kiki's Delivery Service thing. When I listen to it, what would you say, you were thinking about and what were you listening to at the time, if you can remember?
Yeah, I mean, Adam, I think the nice thing about it was that Adam and I sort of pretty clearly laid out like influences that we were thinking that the music could take from, and that made it a lot easier to just sort of get going on things. Ghibli for sure, yeah, 100%. Probably a little derivative times, like you don't have to. But yeah, I mean Ghibli. There's Animal Crossing, just because of the cute animals, and had recently discovered the New Leaf soundtrack, which was just like just an obsession at the time.
So good.
Firewatch. There's a little bit of Firewatch in there. Just foresty hiking vibes. It seemed like a good one to go with. Adam and I specifically talked about Sufjan Stevens, Carrie, and Lowell, which was a big one. Yeah, the layering of the guitars and like, or just like the various like plucked instruments. It's amazing.
So dovetailing the guitar thing into this, since you mentioned the layering and all that, how much would you say your guitar background influenced your work, specifically on a short hike?
Yeah, I mean, definitely quite a bit. I feel like there was a point in time when I first started trying to write video game music that I sort of stepped away from the jazz thing. I was trying to sound like, Mega Man composers, or like, I mean, I guess Koji Kondo definitely has some more jazzy sensibilities. But yeah, I mean, Ghibli stuff in particular, I'd always sort of associated with jazz, since that was sort of my entry point into that level of harmony. I know that like he may have been taking more so from like Ravel or other like impressionist composers, but for me, my first entry point into that kind of harmony was jazz. So yeah, I mean, I think affected like the sensibilities quite a bit. There's definitely places where, you know, I really wanted to have like a lot of interesting chord movement, you know, stuff that's a little bit unexpected and not like super tonal in terms of the harmony, if that makes sense.
Well, that's in contrast to other pieces too, where you do what the listener's expecting in a way that feels familiar or like home and gives you that sense of grounding, you know, like back at the cottage with Aunt May or whatever. So that's cool. That's a nice dynamic contrast. I like that a lot.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, some of it unintentional, but yeah, I'm glad it worked out.
Yeah, we were talking in the Game Brass Discord last night, and Thomas, who's our producer, he was saying like, you know, sometimes you just try something and it works and you don't know why and you just think you like it, and it's like there's nothing wrong with that.
It's also a lot easier to justify it to yourself why after it's already done, after the decisions have already been made, regardless of whether or not the reason why is what you were actually thinking at the time.
Yeah, totally. That makes sense.
And other times you just listen to things and you take influences from what you hear and you just sort of instinctively know what would fit within the grammar of the piece that you're trying to write.
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely like a language aspect to it. You know, thinking of like the way someone writes as like solutions to specific problems and like trying to, I mean, using theory sort of as a lens to like figure out how they're like solving these problems basically in like a more technical way, and applying that. But yeah, I mean, sometimes it's great to just sort of let things go and wing it. There's like a really good Alan Menken interview I saw recently where I mean, he talked about that, like just sort of like, you know, starting up here and then letting the music move like down here type thing, you know, just sort of letting, for like lack of a better way of saying it, like sort of letting your heart lead at some point.
I like that a lot. That's great. So taking a short flight from a short hike. Now this piece is at the very end of the game, right? So I don't want to get into too many spoilers. There is a time when the main character goes on a short flight, hence the title of the piece. Now talking about familiarity and theory language and voicing. Now, Mark, your piece then has been adapted to our ensemble, which is, you know, brass quintet. Daniel, where did you start when you started adapting this for us?
I should say I started from the list of pieces that we were considering, and this one was on the list, and I'm like, okay, I know Robby really wants this piece to be done, so I want to make sure that it happens. Then when I checked it out, I listened to the original soundtrack a couple times, and most of the changes that I had made were done in the service of trying to be idiomatic to the brass quintet ensemble. So, for example, like at the very beginning of the piece, it starts with tuba and trombone doing low notes, and then it ultimately becomes an open fifth, starting at the very bottom of the ensemble, which is the opposite approach, actually, from what happens in Mark's original piece, where it starts with the high pitched instruments, and it's just a gradual cascading effect from there. For us, we don't have as many high sustaining instruments, so this was one of the adjustments that I wanted to make to try to make it feel like it had the same energy. In this case, something is about to pop up and begin, while at the same time not having the original resources available. So then going from the beginning, that fast passage, that like,
which I'll interrupt to say was very, very difficult in the range I had on Flugel.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
You guys made it look effortless, I will say. Made it sound and look effortless.
But so Daniel, having me on Flugel and John Robert on piccolo trumpet, did that come out of like, oh, I know those guys like playing that, let's just do the fun thing? Or was it, you know, I want these two timbres to be juxtaposed? Like where were you thinking with that?
So there were two reasons for that, and I believe that I made that decision like very shortly at the beginning when doing that introductory segment. Particularly having John Robert on piccolo trumpet as opposed to B flat trumpet creates a bit more heterogeneity in the ensemble. It lets the piccolo trumpet timbre stand out a bit more, and I really wanted to use that sound in particular to replicate the more glockenspiel-like effects that were like popping throughout the course of the piece. And then using flugelhorn instead of trumpet, again, lets it blend in more with the horn texture, which I wanted to have, especially for that intro segment. But then later, when the main melody kicks in, the main melody happens in sixths between the horn and the flugelhorn. In the original texture, this was set up by accordion and piano, so I wanted them to be able to blend in a similar way. So that's why I made the timbre change there.
Cool. Awesome. So Mark, how did you feel? I don't remember what point we involved you in the process. What was your reaction like? How about that early on?
No, when you said you were doing an indie album, I thought like indie rock covers for whatever reason. It was a long day. It was a long day.
That's
so
Metric and
like,
July talk.
Well, yeah, that's what I was saying.
Yeah.
Maybe it's over Metric and like, yeah. So I put it on. I don't even know if like it was titled or I didn't, or if like I paid any attention to the title, but I listened to it and I was like, I know this song. Like for the first 5-10 seconds, and then like slowly like just like a huge grin like just started growing on my face, and yeah, it was incredible. Just like Daniel, like the way you like weaved all the voices together and like just beautiful stuff. Like the counterpoint is amazing at some points, and yeah, I mean I love stuff like that, where it's like a lot of moving voices sort of working together. Fantastic stuff. Yeah, it really made my night, that's for sure, and week and month. And
well,
that's great.
Thanks a lot. It's wonderful source material. It was super fun to work with. It played very well, I thought, too.
Yeah,
it sounded great. Yeah, I mean, I will say there's like one particular point that comes to mind. Is it the piccolo trumpet or like high trumpet? Yeah, I mean, there's some great like little response lines from that at one point, and I was trying to think of what Ghibli song it's from. I think it might be from Castle in the Sky. It might be from Kiki's, but yeah, just getting some of the like really sort of like regal like do vibes with it sort of responding to the melody. I mean, that one just sort of came to mind as like something that really sort of stood out and felt nice, and like maybe even was a nod to Ghibli. I'm curious if it was.
I wasn't thinking Ghibli specifically when I arranged it, but it very much does sit in the same general vibe and atmosphere. And with the piccolo trumpet too, what worked to its advantage is that piccolo trumpet can articulate very cleanly, and a lot of the notes that piccolo trumpet had at that point were short, because again, they were trying to mimic more of a bell-like or glockenspiel-like instrument. So I felt that helped it make a bit of a contrast from the rest of the ensemble, which mostly have long tones, especially when the melody was going on.
So since A Short Hike, what would you like to share with people if they want to follow your work now?
Yeah, I mean, the current indie thing I'm working on is a game called Pico, and it's like essentially like a cozy, cat-filled tea-making sim game. It's currently in early access on Steam, so it is like technically out. There is some music in there, but I'm working on some new stuff, so there's more stuff coming for that. Yeah, it's been really fun.
Cool. So thank you, Mark, for joining us tonight. I really appreciate your time. Again, love the soundtrack, love your work. Everybody, please check out A Short Hike and our version of A Short Flight, which is now available on the Brass Indie Expo, our latest album. Go to marksparling.bandcamp.com to hear the rest of Mark's work, and check out Pico on Steam Early Access. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.